course, a current affairs analyst. Mr. Okoro, thank you very much for joining me on Matters today.
Good afternoon, Solomon, and thanks for having me. I'm not just a broadcast journalist. I started as a print journalist. I rose to the position of an editor of a national newspaper, and I also served as editorial board chairman. So I'm not just a broadcast journalist. I started all the way from print. So I'm a journalist to the core.
So I've been doing this for by December this year I'm going to be 23 years as a broadcast journalist, and obviously you've been in this business longer than that.
Yes.
So has it ever come to a time where there have been so many news items all at a time? There are times where there are lots of news reports, and there are times where things are silent, things are calm. And obviously on the last couple of months on the international communities, there have been lots of news cycle coming on, most of them triggered by Donald Trump's return to the White House. There have been so many news coming from some of the statements he says, to tariffs, to the war, so many things. But in Nigeria, has there ever been a time where we've had so many news items coming at the same time? It's like, while we're still dealing with one issue, another one comes out, and then especially since the Muhammadu Buhari administration, it looks like there's so many things at the same time. The economy situation, then ASU going on strike, then Dangote refinery, and then the cabals and the oil and gas, fighting with him, and then fuel scarcity, and it's like one thing after another. Then the insecurity, and then Nnamdi Kanu's life imprisonment. So many news items. Has there ever been a time like that?
Solomon, the fact is that it's always been like this. Yes, it's always been like this.
Really?
Yes, it's always been like this.
It's looking like it's
no, because this is your moment. This is your time, probably, and that's why you're saying it like that. If you go back in time, let's start from Obasanjo. When Obasanjo came into office, when we managed to push away the military, so he started more like trying to re-civilize society, building a new civil society and all of that. And so at that point, the crossover was very seamless for the civil society organizations. Everybody breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, we have let these khaki boys go. So let's try and build a civil society. So Obasanjo started, not long after that, we got into OD. We got into militancy freshly, after that we got into militancy, which Yar'Adua administration at that point inherited. You recall that also Obasanjo had his squabbles with Joshua Dariye, he had his squabbles with Ayo Fayose, he had his squabbles with Zaki Biam, the massacres in Zaki Biam and all of that. And which other governor? Plateau State governor, that's Joshua Dariye. And so within that period, then Boko Haram met on the scene. Sani Yerima said, look, Sharia, and Obasanjo said, look, this thing is. Obasanjo dismissed it. So that's why a lot of people, still blame Obasanjo for festering, insecurity, because if he had nipped it in the bud at that time, it wouldn't have, probably they would have quietened out. But he didn't. But he dismissed it with a wave of the hand. Well, Sani, stubborn Sani.
Who would have thought it would snowball into this level?
All of this, So it was during Obasanjo. After that, Yar'Adua came in. When Yar'Adua came in, he said, look, the elections that brought me in, were clearly flawed. And he now set up the Uwais Committee. He started battling with Amnesty International, with militancy in the Niger Delta, started talking about amnesty and all of that. And his health, took a toll.
Came into the picture.
On his health and all of his health came into the picture. And there was this back and forth, is he alive, is he dead? Got into, before then, the campaigns, Omaru, they said you are dead, talk to them. He spoke to people, from Saudi Arabia or Europe through Obasanjo and all of that. And the back and forth, doctrine of necessity and all of that, people trying to shield him, people trying to stop Jonathan. So
until the news finally came on.
Then Jonathan came in. When Jonathan came in, we had it. At that time, Nigerians were saying, look, things are hard. The economy is bad. We are borrowing. We are indebted to the tune of this and that.
Looking at things now, that time, that looks like heaven now.
Now Boko Haram festered. So what did we get? We got a point. We said, look, your people are killing my people. When Ihe Jirika, chief of army staff from the southeast, said, okay, look, we need to deal with these young men and take them out. And then the north said, look, the fight against Boko Haram is fight against the north. They even threatened, they pressured Jonathan. He removed the Ihe Jirika, from office and all of that. So Solomon is always being like this. It's always been like this, but it depends on, and as journalists, as newsmen, we thrive on chaos because it is bad news that is good news for us. Like they say in journalism school, if a dog bites a man, of course, it's no news. But if a man bites a dog, it becomes news. So, but I think Trump, the Trump weighing in or stepping in on the Nigerian case has heightened, the issue. But this one will still feel like it will pass. When Olusegun Adeniyi was spokesperson to Yar'Adua and there was an issue, Shegu was fretting all over the villa and Mr. President, we need to. Yar'Adua called him and said, Shegu, if you listen to CNN, you discover that they beam one particular news for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours one day. By tomorrow, another thing will have happened and they move on. So Shegu, this thing that you're fretting about, forget about it. Nigerians, will move on. So that is how it is. With this Trump thing now, probably 3, 4, 5, 6 months, it will feel like
that 3, 4, 5, 6 months, there'll be lots of damages. I'm just trying to imagine the damages that will have been done.
Depending on the side the damage is coming from. We already witnessing damages here. The state of insecurity, which is palpable. You can touch it, you can feel it in all parts of the country, all the 6 geopolitical zones, including the FCT. No zone is spared. So the damage is already here. What we are trying to do is to put a wage to make amends. How do we come back? How do we walk back from our situation now? That is the issue.
Now, well, talking about journalists reporting on this, the news we get from Sahara Report, they've documented situations where journalists. Of course, the government have been giving us lots of information and. What they think is going on on insecurity. Of course, before the Donald Trump pronouncement, the federal government has been trying their best to tell us that the insecurity has reduced drastically, and of course, some of us have been reporting the news with one mouth. Really, and then. As you said, the Donald Trump's pronouncement kind of like brought the thing back into the fore, and some may say escalated. And local journalists, have been accused of not being reporting this news properly, because it's like most of the times we have to depend on statements from government. This what's happened. This what's happened. Either that, or we tend to get the news from civil society organizations, the security, some of them that report on insecurity, or international journalists, but Nigerian journalists, investigative journalists have been accused of not doing a good job. But then it's not exactly easy on us. Like as per this story says, that there's this particular journalist, Luka Biniat of Truth Nigeria, that's gotten a lot of attention, and this video has gone viral of some of the reportings have gotten, some of the challenges, trying to confirm some of the news by the Kaduna state government that the insecurity there have reduced. Some of the villages that were ransacked by bandits, but a lot of those village members have come back to their ancestral homes and all like that. But he's telling us here, despite all the challenges he went through and even scuffle with security personnel and all that, he was able to still one or two pictures, and from his own investigation, that a lot of these villages are still deserted, still empty. A lot of these people are still in IDP camp. But what do you have anything, first of all, in defense for local journalists in Nigeria?
Yes, I have a lot. I have a lot in defense of the local journalists. I think it's been unfair. Anybody that says local journalists have not tried to report or to spotlight the level of insecurity in this country, that person it's being unfair and doing a disservice to that noble profession of journalism, especially the branch that is investigative journalism, which is not easy. because journalists are always at risk. Investigative journalists are always
even
at
more.
risk. They come in the crossfires, especially if you have to be a war correspondent, and their life is always at risk. And sometimes, most of the time, they don't even have insurance covers.
Most of them,
they don't have insurance
how
cover.
many media organizations have insurance covers?
And so
journalists?
What we hear from Borno State, what we hear from Kwara State, what we hear from Niger State, what we hear from Nasarawa State, what we hear from Ebonyi State, what we hear from Enugu State,
Benue State, Kaduna State,
Benue Plateau, Kaduna, Borno State, Zamfara, who spotlights those things? Journalists like you and I, who are on the field day and night, ensuring that, look, Nigerians are very well informed, about what is going on. So if one says that, look, Nigerian journalists have not done enough, I think that's a disservice, to investigative journalists. And I say that in the light of the fact that I also understand, that, look, what we even get to hear does not necessarily, in fact, even traditional media, established media houses like the print, you talk about the big names, the flagships, I don't want to mention them, but we know them. They also go out of their way, despite the layers of censorship, from the reporter to the line editor to the sub-editor to the editor, who clears. You see a lot of them saying, look, this is what happened in Kaduna State. This is what happened, in places like Borno State. This is what happened in Kwara State. Something happened. I was watching Fox News, and the kidnapped school girls in Kebbi. Fox News had a video of their hostels. The hostel beds that were empty after they had been abducted. Where did they get it from? Did they use satellite? No, it was a Nigerian journalist who covers for Fox that did that. That's to tell you that they have footprints around town and here in Nigeria.
But that's exactly what we're talking about here. It will be easier for a Nigerian journalist working for Fox to do some of those things, because a lot of these international journalists today, their insurance, life insurance for a lot of their
no, that's one aspect of it. We will come to how the Nigerian government has reacted, how the Nigerian governments react to, the federal, the central, and the state government, how they react to issues like this. Because you also talked about, there was a certain state governor that told the emir to warn his people and to warn journalists not to cover. In fact, it was the emir that said, look, you don't have to spotlight insecurity in this state, in Niger State, so that you do not create the impression that the government is not doing well. So under that condition, what do you expect the journalists to do? But journalists defy these things. You and I will get information every day about what went on in one local government area in Ogun State, in Ondo State, in Kwara State, where headsmen or with killer men, gunmen, have killed people. And we are fortunate to have what we call citizen journalism now, where the social media, things happen. People, real time, online, they put it out there for people to see. I think instead of having to shred journalists, they should, as a matter of fact, give us kudos for doing a good job, because the Nigerian journalist has done enough to hold this government. If every other institution of government acted as journalists, I think Nigerian people in government will be circumspect. They'll be more measured.
They'll be held into proper account.
The level of impunity that we see every day. So it's very unfair to say that Nigerian journalists have not done enough. They're even doing more. On one show, I was guest on one show, 90 Minutes Africa, and the guest from UK was like, you people have not done enough, and look at what is going on. I said, young man, you get information from in the UK from Nigeria. Where do you get? Do you live here? You don't live here. We are journalists. It is journalists that report these things, and when we do, you get to hear. So what do you expect us to do? Come back now. If you think that we have not done well, come back and join us and do the work
now, where some of the criticism is coming from now, you just mentioned Fox, but that's also where some of the issues are, where looks like international journalists can get some of the information that the local journalists can't get. We sometimes why, of course, we talk about life insurance and stuff like that, but there's also the issue of censorship.
That is the problem.
Now, a lot of these international journalists can't tell their media houses outside the country how it is, the figures of actual number of people killed according to the journalist. But because of the censorship in Nigeria, we get to see, most of the times we have to depend on the government figures, which sometimes conflicts with some of this media. So isn't it the situation not exactly from the journalists on the field, but from these media organizations, probably because of pressure from the government? We know what happened especially during the Muhammadu Buhari administration, where DSS was clamping down. I mean, I remember where I was working at where the station I was working with, the owner of the station had to call us, please, I don't have money to go and bail you from DSS. Where there was a lot of pressure from the government, and all that. And so this media censorship, don't you think it's where some of the criticism is coming from?
No, that is actually the problem. And I like in my earlier intervention, I said that, look, the problems are layered. One of them...
layered.
Yes, problems are layered. One of them is, how do you get information? The other one is, this information that you have, how does censorship, stop you or promote your ability to put out the correct information? We have situation where probably there's an accident, minor accident, and the police authorities come out to say, look, 4 people died. And you see journalists go there and discover that 13 or 18 people died. And you come back to the studio as a reporter, Now there's a release made by the police public relations officer that says 4 people died in that accident. And you saw 13 people. Now, there's already a discrepancy, and your editor asks you, look at what the police... Your editor knows clearly that this is what the police said, and that you have the correct information because you were on ground.
And you now see some mainstream media saying, title, police confirm killings of 4 persons.
4 persons, even when you know that 13 people died. So that is what you talked about, the pressure. Because within the locality here, there is a lot going on. DSS might come after you, NBC might come after you,
NBC. I forgot to even add
NBC and all of that. But I mean, how will you hold Fox News responsible? You can't do anything. You can't censor them. And before they even put out that, they also know that, look, the person on ground is a trusted fellow who gives us accurate information. So that is where the problem is, a problem of censorship. And the fact that the free space, is gradually shrinking every other day, where people are not free to say what they want to say because probably the police or DSS, we have the Cyber Crime Act and all of that coming into play and focus at the same time. So it's a lot more difficult for people who are journalists in Nigeria, except you have to report what government said, what government did, and that is not what people want to hear. So you see that aside from the mainstream media, you see people like Premium Times, you see like Sahara Reporters and all of that, the other media, trying to say, look, this is actually what happened. Because they're Nigerian, they also operate from outside. So you can't censor them. So that is where the issue is. Yes, you said it right. Censorship is an issue. And the fact that the free space is shrinking every other day.
Now, where most of this criticism is coming from was when, of course, where the insecurity has been sensationalized. From what we've been gathering here, I know personally on few occasions I've actually been saying from the reports I've gotten over time that, look, it's while talking about the Christian genocide now, while I will agree that lots of Christians have been killed. Personally, from lots of the reports I've gathered, while a lot of Christians have been killed, trying to target Christian genocide tend to trivialize what the insecurity situation is in Nigeria, because it's multifaceted. Christians now, it's not an argue of whether Christians have been killed and Muslims have been killed, and number of Christians have been killed as against number of Christians have been killed. The point is that lots of people have been killed, including lots of Christians. Lots of churches have been attacked. But it's much more complex than that, and much more broad than that. There is a tribal aspect. There is I also talked about the killings in the south, in the southwest, has been majorly from the hands of security agencies under the guise of ESN and under the guise of looking for IPOB members. Villages have been raided, lots of stray bullets, and the criticism have been coming from the fact that before the Donald Trump's pronouncement, lots of journalists have actually not highlighted that there's a Christian genocide in Nigeria, which is where lots of Nigerians have been divided since the Donald Trump pronouncement of Christian genocide. While you have one group of Nigerians saying, well, lots of people have been killed, including probably more of Christians, but it's not just a Christian genocide, it's more complex than that. You have the other half of Nigerians saying it's been a targeted Christian genocide, and the argument, the blame has been more on the Nigerian government, that before the Donald Trump pronouncement, journalists have not actually highlighted that Christians are being targeted, that is a Christian genocide. And so it has, personally, I've even gone further to say lots of Christian organizations too have not actually really come out to cry out strongly that there's a Christian genocide going on until Donald Trump made the pronouncement. And you now see lots of bishops and lots of reverend fathers and coming out to say there's a Christian genocide going on in Nigeria. What do you think about that?
Well, Solomon, I will not. That perspective, as to me, it's wrong, because we have always heard people talk about Christian genocide here in Nigeria. The Plateau State governor,
but not the way it is right now.
Exactly. Maybe Trump had to amplify it, but it's always been there.
Sorry, the time we really heard of Christian genocide was during the Southern Kaduna
Zango Kataf. Yes, what was it? What was it all about? It was genocide against Christians.
Well, some might say it's a separate incident to this brand of insecurity that has gone on.
Nobody's ruling out the fact that there is insecurity, but what form of insecurity is it? The form of insecurity we have is clearly Christian genocide, and anybody who wants to say otherwise is simply playing the ostrich. That person is simply being economical with the truth.
Okay.
That person is just trying to twist the narrative. When the Plateau State governor says, I'm happy that you mentioned the Southern Kaduna killings, Zango Kasab genocide. People of Zango Qatar, are they Muslims or Christians?
It's a Christian community.
It's a Christian community. Who killed them? Is it not people from the other side? And so what is genocide? When you kill one or more of an ethnic, cultural or religious group, one or more, it becomes genocide. And that is what it is. And we see people killed in their numbers. Predominantly Christian communities.
Now, what about reports where, especially from Boko Haram, where we've been hearing that these people kill even Muslims that don't believe in their brand of Islam?